Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome back. Last lesson we discussed consonant clusters with the nasal elements. And the link between last lesson and what we're going to study in the next upcoming lessons is very critical, that it's best to review the quiz that we did in the last lesson before we discuss the new material in this lesson. So let's make sure you got our answers correct. The first word, if you read it correctly, you should get Pandava. Pandava literally means the descendant or the son of Pandu, and Pandu had 5 sons: Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadeva. The second word is Sugandha. Even though this is not a course in learning how to speak and understand Sanskrit, if you see any prefix with the word su, that generally means auspicious or beautiful or good. Likewise, if you see any prefix that starts with du, then you'll know that that means bad or evil. So Sugandha means pleasant fragrance or pleasant smelling, whereas Durgandha means foul smelling or bad fragrance. The third word is Parampara, which means a succession or tradition. And the fourth word is Vancha, which means desire. And the second part of our quizzes, as always, is I have you look at words that are already transliterated, and I have you write them in Devanāgarī. And if you did it correctly, it should look like this. I'm going to translate these words for you. The first word is Shankha, which means the conch shell that we use to blow during aratis and ceremonies and victories. The second word is Nandakumara. Nanda refers to Nanda Maharaja, and Kumara means the prince of, or the young boy. So Nanda Kumara means the young boy or young prince of Nanda Maharaj, another name for Lord Krishna. The third word is Jhanjavata. Jhanjavata means a commotion. And the fourth word is Jambavanti. Jambavanti is actually one of Lord Krishna's 8 principal queens. Jambavanti literally means the daughter or descendant of Jambavanta. So now we may begin this lesson in consonant clusters with 2 or more letters. Just as a review of what we did last week, a consonant cluster is a series of consonants that are blended together to form one syllable sound with no vowels in between. The example that I gave last week was train, because the TR in train formed a cluster. There was no vowel in between the T and the R, therefore it was a cluster of train. If you had a vowel in between the T and the R, you get terrain, and you get a different word, a different meaning from it. So therefore clustering was very important. In the last lesson we introduced consonant clusters through combining nasal elements within its own varga. So we did combinations like nga and ka to get nka, and and bha to get mbha. However, we can't go very far because we haven't even factored semivowels, sibilants, and the aspirate letter. And we only talked about mixing nasal elements with other letters, but we didn't do anything with non-nasal elements as the first letter. So what if we want to make combinations like sa and ta to get sta, or ja and ya to get jia, or ta, sa, and ya to get sia? How do we do that? First, let's look at the consonants of Devanāgarī in its entirety. You'll see in our consonants, the letters highlighted in red have one very important thing in common. They all have letters that contain the vertical line built into the letter. Based on what we did in the last lesson, you can kind of predict what we're about to do in terms of combining the letters. To write consonant clusters with letters that have the vertical stick built into it, what you do is you first take out the vertical stick to form the half letter form of that letter. So for example, if you wanted to make a consonant cluster that starts with the letter la, to write the half letter form of this, you simply take out the vertical line to get ul. Then to complete the cluster, we need to put the second letter in the cluster. And to do that, we simply paste on the second letter to get the cluster. So if I want to have l mixed with ba to get ulpa, we write the letter ba to the right of the half letter of la to get ulpa. And that is how you write a consonant cluster. So let's do another example. Let's write the consonant cluster tna, tna. So again, you can see that the letter ta has a vertical line built into the letter. So if we want to combine ta with na, we need to get rid of the vertical line in ta to get t. Then we combine the half letter form of t with the letter na to get tna, tna. You can see this is the exact same process that we did in the last lesson where we combine nya, na, na, and ma to form the nasal element clusters. Let's do another example. Let's write the consonant cluster sya, sya. You can clearly see that the letter sa has a vertical line built into it. So if we want to combine sa with ya, we first need to get rid of the sound in sa. And to do so, we get rid of the vertical line in the letter sa to get s. Then we combine s with ya to get sya. So the process of forming consonant clusters with the first letter that has a stick into it is very easy. You can do this with any letter that has a vertical stick built in. You simply take the stick out to form the half letter form and then combine it with the second letter in your cluster. But what if the first letter does not have a vertical stick built into it? How do we handle those? Well, we learned how to handle letter la in the last lesson, so I'm not going to review it in this lesson. The letter ra is a little tricky in terms of how we handle combinations that either start with ra or end with ra. So we'll talk about that in lesson 18. But we had the letters ka, cha, the retroflex letters da, ta, da, da, the letter da, pa, and ha to worry about. How do we handle those? Well, with the letter ka, to form the half letter form, usually a part of the right arm of ka will fall off to get the half letter form of k. When you take this half letter form of k, which is the ka with part of the arm taken out, you can combine that with the second letter to form the cluster. So if you want to make the form kya, we write the half form of ka with the full form of ya to get kya. The next letter without a stick is the letter cha. Fortunately for us, there aren't too many words in Sanskrit and in Hindi that start with the letter cha. However, if you do wish to make a consonant cluster with the letter cha, the way it works is the letter cha kind of shrinks upwards so that the next full letter can be added to the right to form the cluster. Again, the combination of cha with another letter is relatively rare. More often than not, we see cha finish a cluster, but not really start one. The next set of letters that don't have a stick are the letters of the ta varga, with the exception of the letter na. So the ta varga, ta, ta, da, da, follow this general principle. To form consonant clusters within the ta varga, you simply stack them upon each other, just like how we did with the la combinations in the last lesson. So if you want to write this consonant cluster with two das combined to get da, it's very difficult to pronounce this letter as it is. You have to hear it in words like mitti. You draw the first da on top. You draw the second da on the bottom without the vertical line to get this shape of da. So words like mitti, which means dirt in Hindi, or chutti, which means vacation or break time from work. This is how you write that consonant cluster, with two das. Likewise, if you want to write a combination of two das, you write one da on top and the second da on the bottom to get da. Again, it's difficult to pronounce this letter as is, but you'll hear it clearly in words like laddu, laddu. Laddu is a very common sweet that you see in India. This is how you write the letter D with two Ds combined. Next, we're going to work with the letter D, combinations that contain the letter D as the start of their clusters. The letter D is a bit peculiar in some respects because the way they form the cluster will look a bit strange. However, I'm going to highlight specific examples of the combinations with the letter D. In the next lesson, we're going to also see a few more combinations of the letter D that take on unusual forms. So the first example is the letter D combined with G. To form the cluster, you write the letter D, but we squeeze the second letter right beneath it. We squeeze letter G that's a bit slanted to the left to get this shape, the G, the G. A well-known example of this letter in Sanskrit is the word Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita. The D in Bhagavad and Gita, the G, is combined to get Bhagavad Gita. The G, Bhagavad Gita. To write the combination of da with da, the same approach is used. You write the letter da. You're going to squeeze the letter da right in the pocket of where the tail is with the letter da, slanted like this to get this shape. Da. Da. Words that uses da are words like Buddha or Siddhi or Shraddha. Da. For da and ma, this one is also a bit unusual because you write da a little smaller than you typically do and you combine it with ma to get this shape. You can see the part of the letter looks like da while the rest of the letter looks like a very distorted ma to get dama. Dama. This is used in words like padma, which means lotus flower. Next is dva. Dva. To write dva, you write the letter da as you normally do. You squeeze the letter va just like I did with dga and da to get dva. This is used in words like dvara, which means gate or door. And of course, if you were to combine two das together, they kind of stack on top of each other and they give a very unique shape as such. You can see the first part of the da is on the top and the second part of the da is right beneath it. So it looks like there's two das fused together to get da. Da. The next letter that does not have a vertical stick is the letter pa. Since pa and ka look very similar, it should be no surprise that the approach to form the half letter form is also going to be very similar. If you recall, in the letter ka, we just took part of the right arm out. Same thing with pa. We take part of the right arm out to get the half letter form of p. Then if we wish to combine this half letter form of pa to another letter, we just simply paste on the second letter to get the cluster. In this case, we have the consonant cluster of pla. Pla. And finally, the last letter that does not have a vertical stick built into the letter is the letter ha. We typically see that consonant clusters that start with the letter ha take place on the second arm of the letter, and it adopts this shape in doing so. So now we're going to explore some consonant clusters that uses ha as the start of its cluster. So when we're trying to write the letter h with ma, we take the second arm of ha and mix it with ma to get this figure. Ma. Ma. This is used in words like Brahma or Brahmanda. If we wish to combine the letters ha and ya together to get hya, we draw the figure that represents the half letter form of ha, and we connect the ya shape to that letter ha to get hya. Hya. So now we're going to do some practice exercises, and now since we can expand our ability to write consonant clusters, what better way to start off our consonant cluster practice exercises by writing the name Krishna. Krishna. So now we're going to expand our knowledge in terms of reading and writing Devanāgarī words, and to do so we have to expand our rules. So the first step is we're going to break it down by syllable, as always, that will never change. But now when we identify letters, we have to take into account consonant clusters. And if we see a consonant cluster, we simply write the half letter form of the first part of the cluster, and then finish it off with the full letter of the second or the last part of the cluster. And then, as always, any vowel markings, viramas, anusvaras, and visargas, we apply those accordingly. So the first step in writing the word Krishna is we're going to have to break them down by syllable. And if you listen carefully, there are two syllables, but remember the breakdown is actually as kr and shna. You may be inclined to think of them as krish and na, but actually in Devanāgarī it's interpreted as kr and shna. So the first step, as always, is we're going to write each consonant down and then do any kind of modifications if necessary. But the only difference is now we're going to take into account consonant clusters. So the first syllable is the letter ka. That one is pretty straightforward. But we're also going to attach the vowel r to it to get kr. The second syllable is not as straightforward because you have a consonant cluster. You have sh and ra together to get shna. So how do we do that? Well, since the letter retroflex sha is used in the start of the consonant cluster, we have to write the half letter form, which is represented as such. Sh. Then to finish the cluster, we write the letter ra down to get shna. Note that there are no vowels or viramas associated with this syllable, so we just leave it as is, shna. No anuswaras or visargas in this word, so we don't need to worry about that. So we can finally write the word, the name, Krishna. Krishna. Let's do another example. We're going to write the word buddhi. Buddhi. So the first step, as always, is break them down by syllable. This can get very tricky because you can clearly hear two syllables, buddhi. However, the breakdown happens after bu, to get bu and di. Then we're going to transcribe each of these syllables. So the first syllable is bu. So since this uses the consonant ba, we write the letter ba down. And then we use the vowel marking u to get bu. And then the next syllable is a little bit tricky because this uses the half da and the full da to get that the da sound. So recall from earlier on, what we did was we took the letter da and we took the letter da and squeezed it right underneath the da to get this shape of da. So now we write that character down that corresponds to da and da being combined. But with this letter, we see that there's a vowel associated with it. We see the short e sound. So as always, we draw that to the left of the letter. Remember, short e is to the left, long e is to the right. So we draw it to the left. If you notice in this shape, the long e's hook that's on top of the horizontal crossbar is a little stretched out, more stretched out than normal. And that's to be expected because if you have a long cluster, you want to indicate that the entire cluster is receiving that short E sound. So that is why you see the shape is a little longer than normal. So we have bu and di. And finally, we apply any anuswaras and visargas, and we certainly have a visarga here on the di syllable to get di. So if you're asked to write this word buddhi, it's written as this. Buddhi. Buddhi. Buddhi is nominative case of the word buddhi, which means intelligence. Let's do another example. We're going to write the word Matsyavatara. So again, the first step is to break them by syllable. So the first syllable is ma. The second syllable is going to be sia. That whole consonant cluster with the vowel is itself one syllable. Sia. Then we have va, ta, and ra. So you have a total of 5 syllables. Ma, sia, va, ta, ra. So the second step is to transcribe each syllable. So the first syllable is ma. There are no vowels associated with the letter ma. It's just ma as is, so we just write the letter ma. Very straightforward, very easy. The second syllable is anything but easy because we see that this is the first time we're dealing with a consonant cluster that consists of 3 letters. 3-letter consonant clusters. It is very possible to have 3 letters. It's even possible to have 5 letters. There's in fact one word in Sanskrit that contains 5 letters. However, in this case we have 3 letters that's combined with the letter a. So how do we do that? We're going to approach that in just a bit. So we will tackle that in a slide coming up. But let's tackle the other easier ones. The third syllable is the letter va. Again, no vowel markings assigned to it, so we just write the letter va that we know. The fourth syllable is ta. The consonant here is ta, but it has a long a to it, so you write the vowel marking that corresponds to the long a sound, which is the vertical line to the right. And then finally, ra. Ra has no vowel markings associated with it, so we just write the letter ra as is. Now we're going to tackle the most difficult syllable in this word, sia. How do we do that? So again, recognize that sia is a combination of ta, sa, and ya. So first we start the consonant cluster with ta, but because we want that to be a half-letter form, we take out the vertical line to get t. The second part of the cluster is sa. So we write the letter sa down, but again, that is not the full cluster. We don't want sa, we want sia. So since we want to get rid of the sound from sa, we need to get that into its half-letter form as well. So we take out its vertical line too to get ts. And finally, we combine the ts with the letter ya to get sia. And this is how you write the consonant cluster sia. So you write this combination of ta, sa, and ya as sia. And then you combine it with the long a sound to get sia. Fortunately, in this very difficult word, we don't have any anusvaras or visargas to worry about. So if you're asked to write the word Matsyavatara, this is how you write it. Matsyavatara is actually a combination of 2 words. Matsya, which means fish, and avatara means incarnation. So Matsyavatara means the fish incarnation of the Lord. If you read the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it will describe the incarnation in more detail. So we got experience in writing words. Now let's learn how to read them. So it's going to be the same process before. We're going to break them down by character, but we also need to keep an eye out for any consonant clusters. And consonant clusters are typically seen by either special characters, like in the case of combinations with da or with ha, or by half-letter forms combining with a full-letter form to get its cluster shape. So let's write this word. Let's read what this says and we'll transliterate it correctly. So the first step is to break each character down and make sure you can recognize any half letters or stacked letters. And if you do this correctly, you'll see that there are 3 characters. You have 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to transcribe each of these characters. So the first character, you can see the consonant va, but to the left of the va, you see the short e sign to it. So you write the undercase I, which indicates that this is the syllable v. Then the second syllable, you'll see that it's a combination of 2 stacked letters. So you see the ta and ta on top of each other to get ta. ta. And then finally, the last syllable, or the last character, is the letter la. There are no vowel markings or anything added to it, so it's just the letter la. No anuswaras or visargas here. So the proper way of reading this word is Vittala. Vittala. Bear in mind the proper pronunciation is Vittala. You hear like a slight pause between the V and then the ta. And the reason why you hear the slight pause is because their two tas are combined together. Remember, ta is a voiceless letter, so you won't hear the voice when you hear Vittala. Vittala. If you didn't have the two tas together, you'll read this as Vittala. Vittala. But it's written as Vittala. Vittala. Vittala is another name of Lord Krishna. It's in a special incarnation as Panduranga Vittala. Let's do another example. Let's read what this word says. So again, you're going to break each character down, and this may be tricky because you'll see a couple of half letters in this cluster. So you have actually 4 characters. You have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the first character is the letter U, the short U that we learned way back in lesson 1. The second character is a little complicated, but you can clearly see that there are some half letters there, so we're going to identify each half letter so we can read this character. So the first half letter that you see is half of the letter J to get J. The second character is another half letter to get another J sound. And finally, the letter that completes the consonant cluster is the letter Va. So you have Jva, Jva. The third character is the letter La. There are no vowel markings or anything associated with it, so that is written as is. And then finally, the last consonant you see is the letter Ma. However, since you have a virama there, it takes off the sound, so you get No anuswaras or visargas here. So the proper way of reading this word is Ujjvalam. Ujjvalam. Ujjvalam means bright and effulgent. Notice that this one had a consonant cluster of 3 letters. You have J, J, and Va, and notice when you pronounce it, you had a little pause between the U and the Jva sound. So you get Ujjvalam. Ujjvalam. Let's read this word. Again, same process as before. You break them down by characters and make sure you recognize half letters or stack letters, which are signs of consonant clusters. So if you do this correctly, you'll see that you have 4. You have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we're going to transliterate this word character by character. We're going to do it one at a time. So the first character that we have is the letter Sa. I'm sure you recognize this by now. There are no vowel markings or anything specific that's done to the letter Sa, so that is left as is, with the exception of the anuswara, but we'll deal with the anuswaras in the next slide. The next portion of this word is a consonant cluster, and you can recognize that because the first part of the cluster is half of the letter Sa. To complete the cluster, you see the letter Ka following it. And the consonant cluster Ska has a vowel beneath it, which is the vowel R. So we have the syllable skr, skr. Next, we have the letter Ta. There are no vowel markings or anything special that's done to that character, Ta, so we just write it as Ta. And last, we have the letter Ma. But since there is a virama right beneath the letter Ma, you take out the sound to get Don't forget about the virama. The virama is very important because that prevents any vowel sounds from being attached to the consonant. So we have instead of ma. We can't ignore any anuswaras of visargas because we got one here. The anuswara is on the letter sa. So you indicate that by the M with a dot above it. So reading this word, we get the word samskritam. Samskritam. Samskritam is the proper way of saying Sanskrit in Sanskrit. Sanskritam. You'll also hear the word Sanskriti, which means cultured. And in fact, the word Sanskritam as the language literally means the refined or the cultured language. Let's do another example. Let's read this word. So again, the same process follows as before. We're going to break them down by character. Make sure you identify any stacked characters that you see here. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 characters. Next step is we're going to take each of these characters and transliterate them. So the first character that we see is the letter Ja. There is no vowel markings associated with it, so therefore we can just write it as Ja, J-A. The second character you can see is a little bit more complicated, so we'll break them down piece by piece. So the first part of the character you can see is the arm of the letter Na. And the second part of that letter is the letter Ma. So you have the consonant cluster Nma. With the consonant cluster Nma, we see an extra vertical line to the right, and if you recall, the extra vertical line to the right means that it's a long ah sound. So we have Nma. Next, we have this very peculiar looking consonant cluster, but if you take a second, you'll be able to identify what that is. So you have the half letter sh sound on top, but sharing the body with the half sh sound, you can see it is the retroflex letter da to get shta, shta. There's no vowels or anything special done to this consonant cluster, so that's left as is, shta. And then the last character uses the letter ma with the long e to the right of it to get me. No anuswaras or visargas here in this word, so we don't need to worry about that. So finally, we can read this very auspicious word, Janmashtami. Janmashtami. Janmashtami, if you break the word down, you get the words Janma and Ashtami. Janma means birth, and Ashtami means 8th. This is because on the 8th day of the Bhadra month, Lord Krishna took appearance on earth. Hence, it's considered a Janma Ashtami, hence Janmashtami. With all this reading and writing practice that we have done, I am hopeful that you feel confident and ready for a quiz. We're going to do the same type of quiz format that we have done in the previous lessons, where I give you 4 words in Devanāgarī and you need to read them, and I'm going to give you 4 words in Roman IAST transliteration, where you're going to have to write them in Devanāgarī. So please study the material well, and please make sure you can do this quiz confidently. We'll go over the answers in the next video, next week. Till then, thank you very much for your attention. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.